Hey everybody, good morning. It is June 13th on the Morning Devo with Bowo. Super stoked you could be with me today as it's a beautiful, hot, crazy hot day. Actually, a little bit overcast on this 13th of June. We're going to be in Isaiah chapter 52 today. So it's been just an amazing time in this book. Gosh, I wish everybody could read this book because it answers so many questions. So many questions people have about God is simply answered in the book of Isaiah. Simply because Yahweh has his own set of questions and his own criteria for who is God. And it's all in the book. So it's interesting. Even the deity says, hey, if someone says there's a God, we got to find some evidence. Like, is there really evidence for that claim? So it's really interesting that the deity of the Bible is one that is, in a sense, skeptical of other gods and calls them out and says, hey, if you're worshiping another God, then prove that God is real, and I'll lay out my evidence. I mean, so it's really an interesting book because as most humans question the existence of the deity, so you see how God, the God of the Bible, questions who people are worshiping and what is the criteria to be God. How do we know if there's really a God or not? And it kind of, the big evidence is going to be God's working in history, foretelling things that are going to happen. One of them is going to be one of the main things is this arm of the Lord that we keep hearing about. And it keeps becoming more clear that this arm of the Lord, Yahweh, will be on the planet. And he's going to do certain things. And so we kind of get an insight into that over and over in this book. Super cool. So it says, wake up, Zion. Hey, Bo, wake up. Don't stay asleep. Wake up. Get going, Get your coffee. Decaf mine. And it says, clothe yourself with strength. I love that. Put on clothes of strength. Be strong, right? That's hard to do sometimes in a world that is chaotic like Isaiah's, where everything's falling apart. War is right there, right? And what's going to happen economically? How are we going to eat? How are we going to drink? Where are we going to get our clean water? I mean, all the big questions. What do we do with all this trash that we throw out every week? How does that work? Do we keep piling up? Do countries keep piling up in the oceans and in the rivers? And what's the effect of all that? So there's a lot of things always going on in the world, and it says, wake up, clothe yourself with strength. Put on beautiful clothes, O holy city of Jerusalem, for unclean and godless people will enter your gates no longer. So there's this promise that Jerusalem one day will no longer have, in a sense, unclean. The idea is people that hate Yahweh, entering in to that area. And it says, rise from the dust, O Jerusalem, sit in the place of honor. So notice it's rise from the dust. It's kind of like from dust we kind of came from, in the sense, dust we go. We really are a vapor. Jerusalem gets lifted up. This is the cool thing about God is he lifts us up. He raises us up. That's the great thing about the gospel. The gospel says you can't do it. That, your salvation can't be on you, man, because you can't do it. But the gospel raises you up. It brings you up to new heights. That's the cool thing. That's why we need the gospel in this world, because without the gospel, we're obviously unregulated. Meaning we're all over the place. We don't know how to be raised from depression, and we don't know how to be humbled from pride. And what we do is we usually go see psychiatrists and psychologists to try to help us with those things. The gospel can help you with it. It is the great regulator. It's kind of neat idea. Rise from the dust, O Jerusalem. Sit in the place of honor. Remove the chains of slavery from your neck, O captive daughter of Zion. I like how the action is on me. Remove the chains of slavery. It's not that God doesn't do it, because we read about that all the time. God's sovereign hand doing this great work of redeeming and freeing. Woo! Allergies. Sorry about that. Every now and then they creep up on me. But I love that there's this balance in the book. It's God doing the work, and then there's you doing work too. Hey, remove the chains of slavery from your neck. You see this kind of idea in the New Testament as well. God does the work, and then there's you do the work too. I think of 1 Corinthians 15 especially. Paul says, I work harder than all the apostles, yet not I, but the grace of God within me. What a great balance. We see it in other places too. I think it's Philippians 2, 12 and 13, or 13 and 14, one of those areas. Philippians 2, 12, 13, yeah. Anyway, work out your salvation with fear and trembling, knowing that it's God that works in you, right, to will and do according to his good pleasure. You see that balance? Work it out. God's doing it kind of idea. So, but I love the action. Hey, maybe today I got to put some feet to my faith. And it says, for this is what the Lord says, when I sold you into exile, I received no payment. How can I redeem you without having to pay for you? Interesting. God says that he sold them into exile, but he says he received no payment. It wasn't really a good transaction, I guess. And it says, now how can I redeem you without having to pay for you? This is what the sovereign Lord says. Long ago my people chose to live in Egypt. Now they are oppressed by Assyria. What is this? Asked the Lord. Why are my people enslaved again? Those who rule them shout in exaltation. My name is blasphemed all day long, but I will reveal my name to my people, and they will come to know its power. Then at last they will recognize that I am the one who speaks to them. It's going to be a real clear time in history, or in the future, where Israel, the Hebrew people, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, are going to know, they're going to recognize, their eyes are going to be open, that it is Yahweh that is speaking to them. Kind of makes it clear, interesting, when Jesus says, I'm going to my Father, and everybody says, all the apostles say, show us the Father, and it's good enough for us, man. Just show us the Father, and we're good. We'll believe you. We'll be comforted. And what does Jesus say? Have I been with you so long? Wow. Talk about a mind blower. Have I been with you so long? And you don't get it? You don't see? And then there's times where their eyes are opened and they recognize that the one who speaks to them is he. Wow. Notice Yahweh says, hey, you've blasphemed me all day long. Why are you enslaved? Man, you should be living in your relationship with God as free people. People free in your heart, free in your mind, not under bondages. That's something, man, it really hits home to me as a Christian. Am I living in bondage even though I know the Lord? Is there some bondage in my life? Bondage to fear, envy, jealousy, strife, resentment, anger, bitterness, right? All those things. Am I enchained to those? Man, Lord, free me from that, right? Walking in a freedom, because we are, in a sense, in right relationship with God. So I kind of like that idea too. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of the messenger who brings good news. That's quoted in the New Testament as well. A lot of these passages are. And it says, the good news of peace and salvation, the news of the God of Israel, that the God of Israel reigns. This is the idea of the gospel, the good news. It's one of peace and salvation. Why wouldn't anybody want to give their life to Jesus, man? Why not? It's free. He died for you, man. Like, what's preventing you from saying yes? Do you not think that you need some kind of covering for your sin? Do you think that you don't have sin? Do you think that you got it all together? I mean, don't you know by now in your life that there's something kind of wrong with you? That even though you try to do right things, you notice that you just become more prideful and self-righteous. And there's always something wrong going on. And the good news is that God's come to help you and to deal with your biggest issue, one of dying. And He's come to give you peace and salvation so that you can be in a right relationship with your Creator. And that's how you were, in a sense, born to be in a right relationship. This is the good news, the gospel. The watchmen shout and sing with joy, for before their eyes they see the Lord returning to Jerusalem. It's the idea of the watchman, the military watchman on the wall, seeing who's coming, right, from afar. And what do they see? The Lord returning to Jerusalem. It's this majestic kind of picture, right, of seeing Yahweh. Where? We're coming to Jerusalem. Isn't that interesting? Again, the God coming to the earth. That's right. And it says, let the ruins of Jerusalem break into joyful song, for the Lord has comforted His people. He has redeemed Jerusalem. There will be a redeeming work. The Lord has demonstrated His holy power before the eyes of all the nations. And it says, all the ends of the earth will see the victory of our God. So it's interesting that God's work will be known throughout all of the nations. Everybody's going to know about the amazing work of God coming to earth and redeeming people. Man, that's pretty cool. Because the good news of Jesus has come out into all the earth. And it goes out and it continues to go out into the earth. And the gospel is preached. What's the gospel? The idea of God coming to redeem mankind in the person of Jesus. Prophesied about long before He was even born. Very clear. Just read all the books from a couple thousands of years before Christ up to His time. Pretty radical, right? And it says, the Lord's going to demonstrate this power. And so whatever we think's going on in the world, whatever we feel defeated, like, oh my gosh, it's just going to get worse and blah, blah, blah. And I've always heard that, by the way. Ever since I was younger, I've always heard that, the culture's lost. We're going downhill. This is something that is just a theme throughout life. Every generation goes through it, where you get to a place and you go, hey, the next generation's lost. And then they get older and the next generation's lost. And they get old, next generation. It just goes on and on and on. And I can't imagine my generation's any different, right? We kind of tend to bag on the younger generations. But you know what? With all that burden of seeing everything kind of always going chaotically, we get to trust that God's going to demonstrate His what? Holy power. Before who? The eyes of all the nations. And it says, all the ends of the earth will see the victory of God. So it says, get out and leave your captivity where everything you touch is unclean. Get out there and purify yourselves. This is the idea of a passage in the book of Corinthians about purifying yourself, right? This is kind of that idea, Isaiah 52. There's no doubt Paul the Apostle, when he's writing in this section, I want to say it's one of the chapter 11s or maybe 7s of Corinthians. I kind of forget the address, but it talks about purifying ourselves. And but no doubt that him being a very scholarly guy of the Old Testament knew these passages. Get out, leave your captivity, meaning go after the gospel. Reach out for the Redeemer. This is the idea of 52. Touch the gospel. Grab it. Get out of your captivity. And it says, get out of there and purify yourselves, you who carry home the sacred objects of the Lord. You will not leave in hurry, running for your lives. Meaning there's going to come a time where you're going to bring the sacred things of the Lord to the temple, and you're not going to have to fear. There's going to be a time where you're just not going to have to fear when you worship. Man, can't we be thankful today if we just have a moment of worship and we're just thankful that we can worship our God? You know, Paul in the New Testament says, pray that you may live a quiet and peaceable life. Isn't that great? Sometimes we think our lives mean something if they're just loud and obnoxious in the Christian world, where maybe I just need to learn how to live a quiet and peaceable life, right? Not make so much noise. Something to think about. It says, for the Lord will go ahead of you. Yes, the God of Israel will protect you from behind. See, my servant will prosper. He will be highly exalted. But many were amazed when they saw him. His face was so disfigured. When they saw him, his face was so disfigured, he seemed hardly human. And from his appearance, one would scarcely know he was a man. And from his appearance, I read that already, scarcely know that he's a man. And he will startle many nations. And it says, kings will stand speechless in his presence, for they will see what they had not been told. They will understand what they had not heard about. Those who weren't given the privilege of knowing this person are going to have a little bit of a cue in. They're going to actually know who he is. They're going to have an idea. Even though the idea seems like that they will see what they had not been told, and they will understand what they had not heard about. They didn't have that privilege of being maybe in Israel, an Israelite. But a certain group of people, ethnic-wise, non-Hebrews, will have an understanding of who this king, this person is. Isn't this interesting? There's going to come a time where God's servant will be on the earth, and he will be hurt to the place of being disfigured. He will startle many nations, rattle them, right? He will, in a sense, make himself known to other nations. And people who aren't from the people of the book, right? The people who have all this evidence, right, will know him. Does that sound weird? This is written 700 years before the birth of Christ. But these things are talking in detail about his life and what's going to happen. In our age, the world being reached with the Redeemer, with this servant who will be hurt. Interesting. He will be hurt, and other people will notice who he is, who aren't from the book. People who have never been told, they will know. They will have understanding. Very interesting. That's talking about you and I. That's what I think. Wow. People who aren't, in a sense, Hebrew, but have an understanding of who Jesus is. It's radical how can this be? How can this book be written so long before events in histories like our world? How can it know it so well? How can it describe the message, the messenger, the recipients, all down perfectly? It's like it's written by God. It's like it's God breathed. Very interesting. And this is what Yahweh is putting down as his evidence, so the world knows that he truly is the everlasting God, the sovereign Lord. Interesting. Radical, faux sure. Man, totally cool. So we are introduced now to this suffering servant, the arm of the Lord, the suffering servant who is going to be beat up and marred and going to be known by a lot of people. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying this time in the book of Isaiah, and you kind of just read it and go, how can you not believe? Like, how, you know what? You'd have to read and absolutely ignore or just throw away this entirely. So I hope you guys are stoked for sure. So take care, okay? We have 53 tomorrow. That's a biggie, right? Let's get like 189,000 viewers for that one. Okay, talk to you later. Bye-bye.